What's going on, guys? Welcome back. It's your boy Jay. Thanks for joining us. We'll go ahead and get started with Alexis today. She's a teacher in Philadelphia, so we'll get to know her and see what she's been up to. How's it going, guys? Please welcome me in joining Alexis. Welcome. So let's just get started. Tell us a bit about yourself. Your hometown, school, and college, things of the nature. We'll start from there.
Okay, sure. So I am a West Philly native, born and raised right around like 58th and Osage. I went to college in D.C., Washington, D.C. I went to Howard University. After Howard University, I moved to New York, where I attended Relay for grad school.
Okay.
I was living in Brooklyn at the time. When I went to Howard, I studied psychology.
Okay.
And I did that because I thought I wanted to be a clinical psychiatrist.
Okay.
Right, but then I got into like my third year of college, and I was like, this is not what I want to do, but I need to finish because I'm already here.
Right.
So once I graduated, I actually got hired as a teacher. One of my friends kind of hit me up like, what are you doing after college? And I'm like, I don't really know. I'm kind of out here trying to figure out my life. And she's like, well, just interview for this organization in New York. They're looking for teachers. You don't really need any experience. So I did it. And from that, I got the opportunity to go to grad school. So yeah, the grad school was in New York.
I do want to talk about what's your current situation. What is your current job? What are you doing? What are you up to?
So I am currently teaching.
Okay.
I was always teaching. I never really had another job after college, but I'm teaching in America, which is a little different than where I was a few months ago. When I taught abroad, my title was English native speaking teacher.
Okay.
And my role was to pretty much teach children like conversational English. So it's not that students in South Korea did not know how to speak English,
Okay.
but it was more of like the syntax of it. So like pronunciation and like, using certain words in a certain context. So it was just conversational English.
Gotcha. How did you even get into that?
So I was actually wanting to leave teaching. I had made it to my third year of teaching, and I was just like, this is not for me. And so I tried really hard to find another job, and I did like some temporary work here and there with some agencies, but I wasn't able to meet my financial needs by doing that. And so my way of figuring out what I wanted to do next while still earning what I needed for like my life was to just go abroad and teach.
I'm assuming you had to essentially look for opportunities. How did you find this specific opportunity?
So it started on YouTube. I reached out to my mentor. And I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't want to teach, but I need money. What should I do? And my mentor was like, literally get out of this country, go teach somewhere else. So I was like, cool. Where? And so my mentor was like, I don't know. Why don't you like get on Google, just do some research. So I went on Google and I just typed teach abroad. And the first thing that popped up was like all of these YouTubers and bloggers just talking about their experience abroad. So I watched a few videos, and the organization CIEE, a lot of the people who made videos from that organization, I really, really enjoyed. So from that like YouTube video, I went to their website and I started like just, reading their page, seeing what they're about, what opportunities were even offered. And then from there, it was kind of like really chronological. It was kind of just like I applied, and then I got my visa, and then I did an interview, and then I was on a plane. Like,
wow. So what was the requirements in that sense?
So the only real requirement to teach abroad is a bachelor's degree.
Okay.
You don't even need any like teaching experience, but in terms of what you'll earn, they have like different categories that are almost like tiers, and the more credentials you have, the more you make. So the only thing you need is like a bachelor's degree. You don't really need anything else.
You have experience both in the States and abroad. How are the salaries different, like in terms of just average, not specific to you?
So I think the salaries are similar, but the circumstances are different. So, for example, starting salary as a teacher here in Philadelphia, you're looking at anywhere between like 40 to 45K a year. Whereas abroad, you're earning probably like $1,000 to like $2,000 a month.
Okay.
However, you don't have to pay rent. The cost of living is like a lot cheaper.
Right.
So it's just like, it really depends on lifestyle in terms of if you're making more money here versus there.
I kind of want to get into your day-to-day of how your teaching was.
Okay.
So first of all, what class did you teach?
Okay.
You know, in general.
Yeah. So when I was in South Korea, I had about 7 classes.
Okay.
Each class consists of maybe 5 to 10 kids at max.
That's it.
Yeah.
Versus here, you probably had 30, 40
Oh
kids.
yeah, here in America, it's like 30 kids in a class to one teacher. It's crazy. The biggest difference in education in South Korea and here is that in America, education is standardized.
Okay.
So when you're standardizing something, you're trying to produce like a large quantity of it, right? So like you don't get to be unique when trying to teach kids differently, if that makes any sense.
Interesting. Okay.
Versus in Korea, where education is really catered to that individual. So the classes are smaller so that like the teacher has more of an opportunity to really see what that student needs individually.
Okay.
Versus here in America, where it's impossible for a teacher to really like zoom in on one student because there's like 30 kids in the class.
Right.
So it's just like, that's the biggest difference. Here, learning is really standardized, whereas in Korea, it's kind of an individual sport. But going back, sorry, to answer your question, I had 7 classes, about 5 to 10 kids each, and it ranged from ages like elementary to high school. So my youngest student, I think, was probably like 8 years old, and then my oldest was maybe 16. And the curriculum was pretty much literally me having discussions with them. So the school director would give me a topic to discuss, maybe like a current event or something popular in Western civilization, because they're not very like up to speed with Western style living.
Okay.
And we would just discuss. Like, so that was it.
It was discussion based for all the classes?
Discussion based for all of the classes. Like, that was it. And now I'm back in America and I'm teaching here during COVID. Right. And it's really, really different than when I left America and I was teaching.
So how is it different from when you were teaching initially?
Yeah, so the main difference is that we're not in school, right? So everything is virtual. Now, where it is similar, they're trying to kind of reproduce an in-person model of like instruction, but online, and it gets really tricky because there's just certain things you can't compensate for in front of a screen, you know?
Gotcha.
But to me, the main difference is that it's harder to build relationships with students, and it's also harder to get students to retain information.
Gotcha. So how is it working on a day-to-day in terms of like, I'm assuming if you're in a physical class, they would come to different batches of students would come to your class. So how is that working in terms of Zoom?
So, like I said earlier, they're still trying to reproduce that in-person model. So, like, kids will leave a Zoom chat and come into a new Zoom chat. Even if I'm the teacher teaching both subjects, they still have to, like, leave the first class Zoom chat and then re-enter a new Zoom chat.
I'm assuming you'd prefer it in person versus online.
Let me sit for this. So if I'm being like super transparent, I don't prefer either. But if I had to pick, I would side more with virtual. Now, the reason I don't prefer either is because in-person model, in my experience, doesn't work either. I've only ever really taught in the urban community. And the way it's set up is very like systematic. And because it's systematic, a lot of kids get lost in that system. And the results that are being like presented to the community aren't real. In other words, there are children who are like literally not learning. And it's like large quantities of these children not learning. But the gaps are so big with the students that it's too late to leave them back. There's laws in place like No Child Left Behind that kind of prevents you from now leaving them back. So these kids kind of get pushed out of the system illiterate, and it really bothers me. The biggest issue with education in America is that students aren't on grade level. So because the student isn't on grade level, that takes away a lot of room for the teacher to actually teach them. So, for example, I teach 6th grade, but a lot of my students read on a 3rd grade level. However, the curriculum I'm given to teach is a 6th grade curriculum. So with that being said, the students aren't able to access the material. So it's not that the material is challenging for them. They don't have the schema to even do it. So if I'm in school for 8 hours a day and I can't access the material,
Right.
I'm immediately going to talk to my friend, or I'm going to try to do something to occupy my time because I can't really engage myself in this lesson because it's like way beyond anything
Right.
I have foundation for. In Korea, all of the students are pretty much on level. So it lessens the behavioral problems and it gives me like the time and environment I need to cater to certain students,
Gotcha.
on top of the classes being smaller. So instead of me policing students and pretty much babysitting the way I would
Right.
in person in America, I wasn't doing stuff like that in Korea. So
Aside from all this that's going on, what do you think is the most enjoyable part about your job?
absolutely the students. The students for me is the best part. I enjoy just like talking to the younger generation. You know, it's just like they know so much. They present it in a different way,
Right.
but they are very like aware of a lot of stuff, and I just really enjoy that part.
Got you. And in terms of something that you don't enjoy, I mean, I'm sure you have a laundry list. Let's talk about talk about the most important one.
The most important one in terms of things I don't enjoy would be my lack of autonomy as a teacher. So although I'm given my own classroom, I have no control over what the students learn. I have no control over, or maybe I should say I have no say, or, you know, I can't put any of my opinion into what I think students should be learning.
What's one of the shocking things you found out while you got into the industry?
So the first thing I thought about teachers was like, teachers don't make enough money. I've always heard that rumor like my whole life, like, oh, teachers don't get paid nothing, teachers are poor, like you gotta really, really love the job because the pay is so low. But like entering my first year as a teacher, I was really, really shocked that it wasn't that low, you know? Like, I'm not really sure who came up with this whole, like, teachers are broke thing, but it's just like, you know, you get paid a lot of money, you know what I'm saying, to, what I like to say, sell your soul.
Right. So maybe in that tense, it's not enough money.
Right.
In that sense, yeah. In that sense, I guess it's not enough money. And if I'm being honest, you know, as a teacher, if you're not, like, continuously seeking opportunities to get more credentials, like by attending seminars or like, you know, renewing your certification, then you do reach the glass ceiling really fast. So like you can teach for 8 years, but because you haven't been like, you know, taking those steps to stay current in your credentials, you're making the same amount of money as someone who's been teaching for like 3 years.
Wow.
You know, but who has been like on top of that stuff. And then the other thing is like student behavior, you know, like earlier I mentioned that, yeah, like in the average class, there are a lot of behavioral things. And so entering teaching, I was like, yo, like these kids are going to chew me up and spit me out. Like, I don't
that's
even know.
what I think.
Right. But when you have really good class management and you're relatable, it's not that. Because here's the truth, like, kids want to please you. Even the like baddest kid you can think of.
Wow.
And I call kids bad. You have those teachers that are like, there's no such thing as a bad student. No, there's so many. but the thing is, they want to do what you want. Like, kids are very impressionable. They're eager to please. But you just have to be really, really direct.
So what would you consider your greatest accomplishment as a teacher? Would that be it, or would it be something else?
I think my greatest accomplishment as a teacher is my advocacy. And I say that because when I worked for an organization, Uncommon, I'll put it out there. When I first started, there were a lot of things I didn't like, and I found myself advocating for change throughout the whole year, 2 years rather, that I worked for them. And it was a slow shift, but I was able to see that change. And the change I'm talking about is the text we were reading. You know, every night I would lesson plan and I would just get so like irked because it would be a story about a white person or stories about Indians or stories about
Korea, or this is here?
This is here in New York.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it would be stories about like, you know, crazy stuff. And I'm just like, they don't want to learn about this stuff. Like, we need stuff that's more engaging, more relatable to their life if, you know, they're going to really get into this. And so, you know, I got a lot of pushback. I got a lot of like, you know, we can't do this because of this and da-da-da-da. But then there was one lesson that I received, and the prompt to engage students said, imagine if you were a slave. That was like the warm-up for class. Because, you know, students come in, they get a warm-up to get them writing, and then we jump into the content.
What?
Yes, the warm-up was, imagine you were a slave. How would you feel, ... Yes, and this was their way to get kids interested in the text we were about to read, which was, like, related to slavery. And so, you know, I was done. I was just like, we can't do this. And so I wrote to my principal, I wrote to my colleagues. I said, this needs to be removed from the curriculum ASAP. Like, this is ridiculous, you know?
And this has been an ongoing thing.
Ongoing thing.
Okay.
And so now, you know what I'm saying, that was removed from the curriculum, and they also incorporate blacker text. So, you know, they read poetry from like Maya Angelou now. They're reading James Baldwin. So
wow.
I don't know how much of that I influenced, but I would like to believe
all of it. All of it.
Yeah, like I would like to believe that is my biggest accomplishment. That is the one piece of tangible change I've been able to see in my career.
That's
so I'm
awesome.
really proud of that.
That's really good. Okay, last question.
Mm-hmm.
What is the most awkward moment you had with one of your students? Like, did somebody run into one of the grocery store and they're like, you're not supposed to be a human?
I don't know that I've had one of those moments yet, only because I'm very low key. You know, like
hide from your students, right?
All the time. You know, I make it very clear, like you have access to me, like at school or on Zoom, not outside of school. But the most awkward thing, the most awkward moment though I've had with a student that let me know like we're all human. I had a student who kept raising their hand. They were like, I need to use the bathroom. And I'm thinking, like, this student doesn't need to use the bathroom. You know, like, historically, they always have an issue when it's time to do work. So I'm like, you know, little Johnny, hold it in. And then he just shouts out, but I have a urinary tract infection. And so we all kind of, like, looked at each other, like, us, the whole class, everyone. And it was just, like, in that moment, I realized, like, wow, these are actually humans. Like, these are people. Like, they're not just, like, you know, like.
So let me get this straight. As a student, I didn't ever see teachers as humans. So as a teacher, you don't see students as humans.
I wouldn't say that, but it's really hard to see them as humans in the moment because I'm at work.
Right.
If that makes any sense. You know, it's very like objective based, whereas in my personal life, I could be more subjective because there's no real end goal to our conversation.
Right.
But when I'm in like teaching though, it's really hard to see them as humans. It's more like, you know, they're almost like little robots, you know, that you need to do a certain thing.
Oh man, that's
And
great.
when they don't do it, you don't like say like, oh, well maybe they're tired or maybe like they need to go to the bathroom.
Right.
You just say like, they're not doing it. Like, you know. But in that moment, I was just like, wow, like, okay. Like,
now
it was
you can go.
Yeah, it was a real
That's
human
great.
moment for all of us.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and that was great insight for me personally, honestly, because I've always been a student, and like I said, I genuinely appreciate your time, and thanks for joining us today.
Yes, thanks.
If you are interested in a specific career path or know someone who'd like to be interviewed, please email us at askalutely@gmail.com. That's basically absolutely without the BS.